and your video function turned off to minimize any background noise or bandwidth disruptions. 3, during the Q&A session, please use the raise hand function to request the floor. And 4, before you ask your question, please provide your name and affiliation. I am now happy to introduce to you my colleagues, Jacob Creswell, who is the head of the Innovations and Grants team, and Zhizhen King. Zhizhen, did I pronounce your last name correctly? I never have actually said your last name, ever.
Not really. It's Teen.
Okay, Teen. Okay, perfect. Who is a senior technical officer on TV Reach at the Stop T Partnership. Before I give the floor to Jacob and Zhizhen, I just want to quickly note that one of the reasons why we decided to hold this special edition of our Virtual Innovation Spotlight today is because countries are now in the process of submitting their next global funding requests for the upcoming allocation cycle. And we thought it was critical to share as much information as possible that could help guide country programs as they consider including AI and CAD solutions in their next global funding requests. That said, Jacob and Zhizhen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jackie, and welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us early in your days and as well as late in your days. The afternoon here in Geneva. Today, we'll take you through 3 general presentations linked to different aspects of artificial intelligence for reading chest x-rays. While Jackie said, we will have a larger Q&A session at the end. We will take 1 or 2 questions after each of the sessions, so you don't have to listen to us talk for 45 minutes straight. And if you have questions, you can write them in the chat box. We'll monitor that. At the end, we will take questions using the raise hand function, so please use that. Thank you. And I just as a beginning and introduction, I want to say that I think what we're going to present here today is a great example of how we work at Stop TB. We provide funding to partners through TB Reach funding proposals that are bottom-up funded for innovative new approaches to improve TB care. This has been made possible by foundational support from Global Affairs Canada and additional support from USAID and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And we take this these requests and funding to promote the use of innovation if it shows promise early on in development, even if it's not endorsed or recommended by WHO or other bodies. We, at the partnership, we want to provide that evidence and help make those decisions and recommendations. Our partners implement high-quality interventions, which we can assist and help monitor and evaluate. And we also work with like-minded partners, such as Find, who work with us on this, to document and evaluate these new tools. We share the work and the results through our networks using the combined strength of the different teams, including Jackie's team, who's setting up these VISs, the External Affairs and Strategic Initiatives, through GDF, Communications and Advocacy, Country and Community Support for Impact teams, to promote the results, to spread the news, to drive demand, and deliver the products and services to partners. We do this with developers, working with developers, with implementers, and as funders, as a partnership. So I think it really comes together, and I hope you'll see that through the next 45 minutes or so. So I just want to acknowledge and introduce Zhizhen again, who works with me at TB Reach, and I'll hand over to now. And she really is the person who has taken all of the work that we've been doing for 8 years or so around artificial intelligence and chest X-ray to a completely new level in the last few years. And I hope that you will find what we present informative and as exciting as we do. So Thanks, and Jijen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jacob, and thanks, Jackie. Maybe before I go, if during the presentation we'll have three main topics and quite long. So if anyone have any burning question that you would like to address during the presentation, please leave them in the chat box. We'll have people monitoring them, and at the end of each topic, we'll try to take a couple if time permits. And there will be a free discussion Q&A at the end where people can raise their hands. And as I mentioned, there are three main topics today. While I'm sharing my screen, and the first one I will start with is the landscaping report, which will show what are the available CAD solutions that are commercially available on the market or soon will be available on the market. What are the characteristics of them? And the second major topic is a user experience, a qualitative research that StopTV partnership has conducted from several early implementers. And we want to present what they have learned and what they wanted to share with other future users. And the last topic, which will be more heavy in numbers, so I hope you'll still be awake. But that's where the most important, and I think most people will be interested in, is the evaluation of performance evaluation of multiple commercially available CAD software. So without further ado, I will start with the landscape analysis. First, I want to acknowledge that this work would not be possible with several colleagues from the working group showing here. And I saw that some of you are in the webinar today. I saw Sandra's there, and Tasneem, who's really our webmaster. And we are also grateful to all the private companies who have opened up their solution and who have participated in this project. This landscaping project is supported by the StopTV partnership and by Find. And I would also want to declare that I have no conflict of interest. So I think it's inevitable that artificial intelligence, who has changed all aspects of human social life, has now finally come to public health and healthcare in general. For TB, for many of you who may already know, chest X-ray is a very important tool for screening and triage TB, because X-ray is actually a very prevalent tool used in various disease areas, and is a relatively sensitive tool to screen for active TB. It can pick up a large amount of asymptomatic patients who would have not been detected if it just rely on symptom screening. And chest X-ray can also improve efficiency of gene expert testing by triage patients who have a higher risk of having active TB. However, that being said, the use of and access to chest X-ray is limited. Primarily, there are various factors, but primarily because of one, a lack of sufficient trained radiologists in many high TB burden countries, and a high variability among the reader and even within the reader itself. And this is where we see that AI-powered CAD system can have a huge potential in the use case of screening and triage for TB. And as I will give you a little bit background on CAD evolution in TB space. As Jacob mentioned, this StopTV has really started working on CAD in the early 2010s. At that time, there were only one package. It's produced by Delft, and it's called CAD for TB. And then at that time, the main technique, machine learning technique that were used, AI technique, was machine learning. and which will come to an importance because in 2012, there is a major breakthrough in the space of artificial intelligence with AlexNet that has pioneered the use of GPU to build a deep learning neural network. So since then, there has been a lot of CAD products emerged in various disease areas, including TB, cancer, and also in the ongoing pandemic, COVID-19. Since then, the Stop TB partnership has been supported multiple rollout and pilot of CAD solution in Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, Zambia, and etc. in the following countries. The major, since the changes in technology we have really seen from a machine learning system, which I show in the schematic, the main difference between machine learning and deep learning is we no longer rely on manual feature extraction. The learning itself is completely automated. That has made, of course, that require more computation power, and that's what's being realized in GPU nowadays. But however, this automated learning has made the understanding of how AI work more complicated than before. So since the breakthrough, there has been at least two that were more aware, people are more aware, has entered into the TB space. And these are CureAI and Lunet. Stop TB partnership has published the very first peer-reviewed journal showing here on Nature Scientific Report back in 2019. But since that was just a year ago, but since then there has been more technology on CAD has evolved. Just very quickly, I want to talk about deep neural network because this is the main method that people using in CAD solution. But I will not go into the details. I just want to show you a very plain vanilla schematic of the very basic of deep neural network. The neural network is composed with nodes and layers that you can see here. The nodes are essentially mathematical formula that take multiple input and apply some magic and then spit out an output. And in the network, every node is connected, and we don't know, the learning is building those connections, and the layers are what is allowing them to build on complex construction and having more than one hidden layer. These are called hidden layer, are called deep learning. So I will not go into the details of how things are, how CAD is constructed, because any commercial software will not review how the development is made is fiercely guarded business secret. However, for this project, we would like to do is to assess what are the CAD commercial software available or soon will be available, and would like to provide TB program and implementer with the information that are relevant for implementation. And here I listed 9 relevant information. During the presentation, I'll only go over the first 7. There will be, we'll talk about it in the later stage, that where you can find all the information. So yes, so the survey was a landscape survey was conducted through a structured survey that were sent out to CAD developer that we have heard of among our network. The survey started in January 2020, and the responses from each CAD developer were reviewed and clarified and then compiled into a product profile. And each product profile before they were finalized, they were reviewed and approved by the manufacturers. So the survey was completed on the 8th of May. And we only include the product that has the latest version. And just to point that out, during January to May, there were already 2 AI companies has launched a newer version of their software, which we updated. But it's underscoring the rapid changing nature of this industry. There are some information that were marked as confidential by the manufacturer, unfortunately, so we could not review them in the results. Now, without further ado, the results from the survey coming from a 26 CAD developer survey. However, among them, only 11 has completed the survey and have given a final approval. 12 did not respond or did not confirm they have a solution for TB. 1 product ceased to exist, and 2 has responded but declined to participate. There is one that there are actually 2 that we are currently engaging to be added to the network. So the following detailed result will be based on the 10 AI products who have completed the product profile. So the first topic I want to talk about is on registration and certification. There are out of the 10 CAD products, there are 7 that are currently available on the market, and those are the product listing here. Those ones that are highlighted in red are the ones have CE marked with their latest version. That includes CAD for TB from Delft, made in Netherlands, infrared DR checks from Information, made in China, Lunet Insight CXR from Lunet, made in South Africa, and QXR from QREI, made in India. There are 3 products are in the validation stage, so they're not commercially available on the market. And the deployment method, I think, is really a lot of people will be asking, as internet can be a challenge for most of the developing country, and it is important to notice that for online version, it is the most common. Every product pretty much have a online version, but that require stable internet connection. It's very important because, especially for the upload, because DICOM images are usually very large compared to text data. The processing time, however, doesn't seem to be a limiting factor because it usually takes less than a second. And the entire workflow would require internet connection. How it works is it will take user take a digital X-ray, and that is automatic upload to the cloud that has a program that runs the CAD software, and the software spit out a result, then it's downloaded to the user's computer. For those country implementers working in a setting with challenge internet connection, so an offline solution is really important for them. And for that reason, here I listed the 8 product that has an offline solution. So instead of having a cloud setup configured, there will be a device which need to be set up on site, mostly one for each site. So the whole workflow can be done offline as long as there's connection to the box. The calculation, the computation is done in a box and is automatically spit out to the user's device that are connected to the box. Here there are 2 that I'm taking just from the internet, the commercial CAD box. Now, many of implementers are very interested in pricing, and I have to regretfully admit that pricing is a section where we do not have a lot of responses, or that has not been marked as confidential for the obvious reason. However, we have provided the list of contact for a quote on the website. I will get into the website later. However, I want to highlight that there are several sources of costs that any TB program and implementer need to consider. So as I mentioned before, for offline solution, here I'm only talking about the CAD software. I'm not talking about any checks X-ray machine. If you're procuring a offline box, then there is a cost usually associated with the box, and then this is what is provided by Delph. There are also, if an offline solution, if an online solution is being deployed, a very common way of pricing structure is cost per read. And this unit cost is usually depend on the overall volume and can have time limits. And the third source of cost is around installation and setup. So for both cloud setting and so online reading setting and offline. And the fourth source of cost, which Jacob will get into later from the user survey, is a validation cost. Often some developer would require a validation stage to check various, such as checking the metadata from the DICOM from the past system, the encoding, and that might be an additional cost. Then lastly, maintenance and updates. Usually we know from what we know is usually bundled together in the cost per read, but it can be a separate cost if it's a offline program. And there are some notable mention. AXAR is a software that they offer for free if it's being purchased with the Redison, the X-ray system together. And AppCon, and they offer their CAD solution free of charge for social projects. And another controversial important issue when it comes to digital health is around privacy and data sharing. And I wanted to highlight that almost all commercial company that we have contacted here they understand the privacy concern, the data sharing concern. They offer a package that includes set up local server in country. However, that usually come with an additional cost, and that would require a proper and certain level of technical know-how when it comes to local server. For most of the online deployment, commercial cloud servers are mostly commonly used. That means the Amazon Web Service or Baidu Cloud and etc. And all the CAD developer that we have surveyed, they all have an anonymization program that can de-identify any patient identifier in the DICOM before they were uploaded and parsed online. When it comes to data sharing, pretty much no company that we have contacted shares any DICOM pixel data or metadata, with a few exceptions. But they all mentioned that the data sharing will be only upon consent from the user and will be used for product development and optimization and troubleshoot. Now, when it comes to running the CAD solution, any kind of CAD products that we have surveyed here, they can all parse anterior posterior or posterior anterior view, except the 3 products listing here can only work with posterior anterior view. So that's important to know. And one product can read, only this one product can read lateral checks X-ray. There are a couple of products that can read DICOM, JPEG, and image in multiple format, but these 4 products here can only parse DICOM images. And I would like to highlight that most of the CAD software are intended for use in adults or young adolescents above 14 to 18 years old. There are only 2 solutions that out of the 10 that we know marketed to be used under 14, 15, but above 3 or above 5 years old. For extremely young children, there yet to be any good developed CAD solution for them. So the output from different CAD software are slightly different. As you can see, there's some screenshot from the 10 CAD products. But in general, this output includes a heat map that shows the areas of abnormality. That's, for example, in this interface, in this output. And it shows a numeric score of which corresponds to the probability of having a certain abnormality. Some product does offer to dichotomize the score to provide a yes, no, or screen, not to screen outcome. And they use a default cutoff score, but that can be also adjusted upon client's request. And these are the products that use that have dichotomization, and then these are the default cutoff score they use. It's worth mentioning that several CAD products can report specific long abnormalities such as calcification, cavity, opacity, consolidation, etc. And not all the product can report non-TB, have only a TB score and no any other abnormality. And those that has those specific long abnormality are listed in here. And for the interest of time, I'll go quickly on the operational characteristic. I'll show you where to find the detailed later. But it's worth mentioning that some here the version 6 of CAD is not so reliable when the check X-ray machine is about 12-bit deep, and it will not work with 16-bit X-ray machine. This, however, is planned to change in the newer version of CAD for TV. And Redison's system, they claim that it works best with the Redison check X-ray system. And their integration to legacy and existing workflow is all possible, except for one product, but it usually come with an additional cost. As I mentioned, so all of the detail that I mentioned earlier in the presentation can be found on this website, aiforhealth.org. The reason we host the online repository is also because the rapid changing nature in this industry. We want to, and we will be keep maintaining and updating the websites. I would just want to go quickly show you some basic structure of the website. So this is the home page, and once you click on individual, these are the show box of individual CAD products. Once you click on each one of them, you can see the product page, or you click on the product tab. This is just an example. In the product page itself, you can see the name of the company and the name of the products, and there will be always a link to the company's homepage. If a demo page is available, it will be provided here for you to play around with their demo version. And the product profile is, which I'm not showing on the screen, but if you go to the website, you can go looking at the detail of all the aspects that I mentioned before. This product profile can be downloaded as a PDF, can be viewed and shared offline using this button. It's very important to notice the last updated time. Once we do have a new product added or a new version added to the website, we will be indicating what's the day that were added. Another important function on this website is comparing the compare page, where you can choose up to 3 products and can compare them across each other. Again, they download a summary can be downloaded and shared offline. I wanted to encourage you all to have a look of the website and play around. But in conclusion, the CAD industry is filled with a variety of products at different stages, and it's a really rapid changing field. And this is the very first time that anyone has looked at the landscape of CAD product for TV, and then provided all the implementation relevant information in one place. And this website will be forever free, independent, and it's a neutral space, which we will keep regularly updated to keep abreast of the rapid changing landscape. So that will be the landscaping project presentation. So if there's any question in the chat, we can take them, or if we have no time, we can jump to the next presentation.
Hi, Zhizhen. Just to let you know, I've been monitoring the chat group. There's no questions as of yet.
Great. Since I'm a bit running out of time, maybe we can go to the next presentation by Jacob.
Thanks, Zhizhen. The user experience is the next presentation that I'll talk through. It's really just about 5 slides. We wanted to present the general findings from different users that we have gathered through the TB Reach work. We interviewed 11 different TB Reach projects in 8 countries. We also interviewed larger research and programmatic approaches in countries that were outside of TB Reach for this. And the questions focused on use case, why use AI, the barriers and challenges, the use of threshold scores, training, and other user experiences. So I think this may be redundant, but I actually think it's for you if you're on this webinar. But I do think it's important to go over some of these points. The decision to use artificial intelligence and how we think about evaluating artificial intelligence for chest X-ray is really going to be focused on the alternative human in that setting. There is, unlike we have laboratory gold standards, or we think we do, there is no human gold standard for chest X-ray reading. And to take that one step further, you may be in India, in Mumbai, and have a pulmonologist with 20 years of experience, excellent performance, who can provide readings for chest X-rays. But if you're sitting in Lesotho, you may not even have access to a radiologist, given the human resource constraints in a number of countries, for example. So the decision to use artificial intelligence or human should, and being able to evaluate them is really important. What is the human that you would be able to access in your setting, not the best performing pulmonologist with many years of experience. Zhizhen mentioned that chest X-ray has 2 real advantages and uses. It can identify people who are asymptomatic, who should be tested, as many prevalence surveys have shown. And it can also identify people who are symptomatic, but do not need testing. If you can go back, thanks. And so these, generally speaking, are the kind of use cases we talk about, more of an active case finding screening use case and a triage use case. human readers don't use threshold scores. It's generally a dichotomized abnormal, normal, or TB abnormality, non-TB abnormality, normal. Some kind of categorical presence. And the advantage, which Zhijian has mentioned, and I'll talk about more, is that artificial intelligence can change. It's a variable. It's along a continuum. And we know that humans perform differently. Different humans will look at the same image and have different interpretations. Different humans will, the same human may look at the same image and have a different interpretation over a period of time as well. And the artificial intelligence, the idea is to be able to standardize that. And I think finally, the thing to mention at scale, and when we're talking about use of artificial intelligence, I think the biggest reason is when you're talking about doing something at scale. If it's active case finding, like you see in the picture below with a number of mobile vans equipped with chest X-ray in Pakistan, it can be very difficult to find the proper number of humans to be able to read all of those chest X-rays in a standardized way with more or less the same amount of experience. Humans get tired much more easily. They get sick more easily. And instead of decreasing costs when you have more throughput, costs can actually rise if you have to pay overtime, if you have to do these things. So there are a number of advantages of doing things at scale when you have automated reading of chest X-ray. And finally, that as I will get to in a couple of slides, situations change in countries. In reality, we're not talking about research situations. We're talking about the fact that you may have access to lots of expert cartridges in July, and in August there can be a major shortage. And the ability of humans to change the way that they read and to say, oh, we'll allow more or we're going to restrict the reading is much more difficult than it is if you're doing it with the machine. So retraining and all of that is much more complicated. So those in terms of use cases and reasons to use. You can go to the next slide. I think a lot of these issues for difficulties and barriers Zhijian has already mentioned, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But to highlight that overwhelmingly, users talked about the importance of having offline systems. If you're going to screen in prisons, for example, it is often impossible to get a connection, internet connection. If you're going to screen in remote rural areas, very difficult connections. Even in urban settings, if you're looking at Wi-Fi or cellular service, the cards and everything, you don't want to have bandwidth issues and problems with internet. So users repeatedly talked about the importance of having access to offline boxes. However, in general, there was a feeling that most of the companies were pushing the cloud solution. And you know, there are a number of companies on the call here, and they can talk as well. But troubleshooting is clearly easier if you have access to online systems. And so there is this push. It's easier to troubleshoot. It's easier to see what is going on if things are working in the cloud. Zhijian mentioned the data privacy and company servers versus local servers. This is, as AI gets scaled up, this is something that it will increasingly be an issue. There were a number of mentions because each program and intervention is using different databases. Being able to integrate the software to the research or the project or the program database is something that is difficult, and obviously many different programs, even in the same country, it's hard to be able to quickly integrate them. That was something that was brought up. Zhijian also mentioned the validation fee. If you have if you're trying to do this in a hospital system and you have to validate each individual hospital because they have many different machines, different makes and models, the costs, if that fee is charged, could be very quickly quite high, and it was something that was mentioned by users that was quite it could be a frustration. And I think, again, going back to the scale issue, if you have to pay the setup and the installation and there is a per read fee that is higher, if you're doing things on a small scale, it actually, depending on where you are, may be not worth the effort if you have access to relatively cheap, good performing humans. I think, again, once you go past a certain scale, it's very difficult to replicate with humans. But at small scales, it may not be very effective to use artificial intelligence. Overall, installation, training, workflow, I think important to note that overwhelmingly, there was a lot of generally that the providers were very helpful, and the installation was easier, fairly easy, and getting easier as the different providers learn more about the different needs. The use of the chest X-ray in general, Jijen showed the process is very simple. You have a score. There's a cutoff above that score. You're making a decision to test. Usually, below that you do something else, and it's very simple. A number of interventions were talked about the fact that they did not use any clinical staff at all, and they could do hundreds of thousands, literally, of these screens and testing people and diagnosing thousands of people with TB without having clinicians on board. So very easy to use for different levels of staff. There were some concern in certain instances with clinicians who may receive a score that they see as a very high number, but clearly doesn't have TB or has a negative test. So that sometimes could cause interpretations and confusion around interpretations. That was mentioned. And I think that is related to the fact that, again, as Jijen mentioned, there is a growing use of the artificial intelligence to mimic a radiology report rather than just give a numerical score. And that's something that users are quite keen to test. It's something that has not been validated, I don't think, at all, really. So it would be quite interesting for groups that are wanting to do this. To the next slide. So this is generally the other slide I think is quite important, and the use of abnormality scores or threshold scores. All of these products, as Jijen mentioned, they produce a continuous score, 0 to 100 or 0.01 to 1. And it's a huge advantage that you're allowed that you can do that. And that score can be, that threshold, test, don't test, can be changed from day to day, from morning to afternoon. It is something that is flexible based on the local needs. And as you'll see in the final set of slides around the data, it's very important to be able to know where to set that score. And we'll show you can set it at very high sensitivity so you don't really miss people. But in reality, in terms of feedback from implementers, the 95% or 90% or whatever it is, thresholds or those scores that related to those thresholds were not as important. What was more important was the economic realities. How many expert tests do you have? How many modules do you have available to you? So if you're screening 200 people, how many people can you actually test with expert in a given day and not begin to have a massive backlog? So that was the more important criteria rather than a kind of an academic point of we want to get 95% sensitivity. So different implementers were using in the same country different scores depending on the population that was being screened and depending on the situation that they had in terms, again, usually in terms of expert reagents and testing. So that I think is something that clearly for new users, there needs to be, and this was again something that's clearly asked, there needs to be good guidance about how to decide on the score before you really, as a pilot, before you really do full-scale implementation. So if the next, I think that's it. So that is just a brief summary on the user experience, and the rest of the time will go to talking about the data. I did see a number of questions. Carrie, could you read out some of them? So just a couple.
Jake, just very quickly, I think I'm going to jump in here.
Okay.
One, Carrie, I realize we did not introduce you. So if you could introduce who you are, and then maybe we can read out the first 3 questions and then save the rest for the Q&A session. And just for Jacob and Zhizhen, since it's already 2:20 p.m. and I do want to leave, because there seems to be a lot of questions, enough time for the Q&A session, if we can wrap up this session in about 5 to 6 minutes, that would be. So Carrie, if you can introduce yourself and read out the first 3 questions, and then we will finish the rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Sure. This is Carrie. I am the Program Management Support Associate for the TB Reach team, and I will go ahead with the questions now. The first question is, in the box or offline version is damaged, how about the insurance? How can we continue the services? So I think that should be if the box. So Jake or Zhizhen, could you respond?
I think that's probably a better question for the providers, the developers. It will probably depend on which product you're going with.
Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the later stage. So if Casey, you can wait.
Okay, so I'll move on to the next one then.
Sure.
Okay. Elizabeth has asked, has there been any demonstration of the utility of this technology for TB treatment monitoring?
Not that I'm aware of for TB treatment monitoring. I know there are some developers that are looking at in the R&D space and trying to explore the commercial value of having a product that monitors the treatment clinical management of TB cases. But I'm not aware of any product that are commercially available or close to be commercialized.
Jake, anything to add, or can I go on?
Go on.
Messini has asked, please clarify on the use of CAD for TB for detection of abnormalities other than TB.
So CAD for TB is, well, Delft has 2 CAD products, one for TB and one for COVID using X-ray. But the product for COVID is in the validation phase. They're still working on final tweaking of the products as far as I understood. So the CAD for TB products can only detect TB associated abnormality, and there's no any other non-TB abnormality can be reported.
Just to add to that, I think the issue there is going to be the use of mimicking radiologist reports. So a number of products can now provide look at different, they can say there's consolidation, there's cavitation, these kind of readings or interpretations have not been validated independently, to my knowledge. So it's something that should happen, will happen, I think, but is still in that process. So I think, and we'll move on. I know Jackie said we're short on time, and I hope this is some of the more interesting results. So very quickly want to acknowledge our collaborators for this data in Bangladesh, ICDDRB, Saira Banu and her team, in IOM in Nepal for the work that was done there, and Bishwa and the team in Nepal, and Melissa Sander and her team in Cameroon. This is all data that they have collected. So the Jijen has talked about what we have been doing, and WHO is, I think it's important just to mention for people that WHO is currently reviewing available data on AI for potential recommendations. And there are a number of important questions to ask. How does this software perform? Is that reference standard, should that be a human, a microbiological reference standard, a composite reference standard? If I've already made the decision to use artificial intelligence, what product might I choose? And once I make that decision around the product, how do I think people have put in the questions, how do I know what score to use in my program? And the data that we present here is publicly available. You have the links there. We'll share the presentations around. The archive paper was published just recently. So the data that were presented primarily comes from Bangladesh, 23,000 observations from Bangladesh, but data that was published late last year was coming from Nepal and Cameroon. All of these use cases, I think important to mention, are more on the triage side. So these are people who are generally symptomatic and coming in they get the chest x-ray and the question is it's a triage. These are not generally active case finding approaches. In Bangladesh, there was one read per image, one human read per image. In Nepal and Cameroon, there were 2 human reads per image. One of them in Cameroon was a teleradiology company, in addition to the radiologist in Cameroon. And you can see, again, just in terms of data, 15%, 18%, and 2% in terms of bacteriological positivity. This is on one expert's test. And in Bangladesh and Nepal, quite a number of the people had prior history of TB. You can go to the next slide. I mentioned that expert is the microbiological reference standard for all of these studies. It's important also to mention that developers only had access to the anonymized images without any demographic, laboratory information, or results. And this is something that, again, we would like to grow through the collaborations and try to be a reference for both developers and implementers for these unbiased evaluations. So I have 3 slides that I'm going to present before handing it back to Jijen for the final analysis. And they're very similar. They're ROC curves, they're ROC curves. And the idea, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar, is that anything that is good is up to the upper left-hand corner. It gives a score closer to 1. Anything that is around 50% is a guess. Essentially, I can do the same thing just by guessing yes or no. So you want to be close to 1. You want to be close to that upper left-hand corner. And you can see that this is data from Nepal, all of the 3 that we looked at, this is CAD for TB, Lunid, and QRXR, performed reasonably well from 87 to 91 in terms of AUC. And there was no statistical difference between them. You can see that the slight lower performance of CAD for TB there was due to the space that Jijen is showing in the red at lower sensitivities. Once you get up to a higher sensitivity, essentially the 3 software perform the same. So, and you can also see then that all of them outperformed the human readers, the 2 human readers, or performed this similar to human readers that read those images. If you look at Nepal, you see if you look at Cameroon, you see that there's fewer observations, there's more observations, but fewer TB cases. So that's the reason that the graph looks the way it does. But both humans did not perform as well, again, as the automated systems, and similar numbers, slightly higher actually, from 89 to 93. Very good, but not enough numbers to really get in terms of differences in the different software packages. The exact same software packages were evaluated. Now, if we go to the final one with Bangladesh, and that's the one that Jigen will also talk about, many more numbers, 23,000 gives you much closer confidence intervals. Again, you can see relatively good performance, not as good as the other 2 that we showed, from 82 to 90 in terms of AUC. The human reader did not, well-experienced human radiologist did not perform any better than the algorithms. One of them performed, I think one of them performed statistically significantly better than the human reader. One thing to mention here is that because of the timing of the analysis, we're happy to be able to include the latest version of QXR, and that's the one that performs the best. As have a number of studies have documented that as these versions go forward, the performance improves, and this is good timing for Cure AI. It may be not as good timing for others that are about to release new software versions. We will happily update this analysis before it goes to peer review in that case. But I think the other thing to highlight here is that we just from last fall to now, we included 2 more softwares in this analysis, both from China. They both performed very similarly in this. They all, again, as good or better than a radiologist. And then the final thing that I want to say is that this ROC curve analysis is the standard approach, but you can see from the different data that we're showing that it's very difficult to actually see any differences and in the performance if you're just looking at AUC. So what Jigen and we have done is taking a much more nuanced look at some of this data, and I will turn the last part of this over to her. Thank you.
Thank you. So as who know what ROC curve is, who care what's the trade-off between sensitivity and 1 minus specificity, it's so hard to translate the ROC curve to something that is relevant for implementation decision. Before I explain the new analysis we present here to help implementer, there's also in the archive, in the paper itself, we have also presented the metrics using precision recall curve. For all of those who are more on the technical side, this is where you analyze unbalanced data. And in our case, it's less than 50%, it is unbalanced. But because it's less relevant to implementation, I'm not going to cover them in the presentation. You can, however, find it in the paper. Link is in the previous slides. So I want to focus the time on, so what does it mean for implementer? So which CAD products should I choose, and which cutoff score to select? The difficulty with CAD is it's a continuous, it's a triage and diagnosis adjunct tool that provide continuous output instead of a binary output. So you can't just simply measure it with one set of sensitivity and specificity. That's why there is this ROC curve is the standard matrix. But what's relevant for program and implementer is what's the sensitivity, just how many TB cases will be missed and what's the implication of cost? What is the number of TB gene expert tests required or saved through the program? What is the number needed to test? And the abnormality score, like it or not, is what you will need to interact regularly using CAD. So here on this graph, it looks intimidating, colorful, intimidating, but just let me break it down for you. So all the graphs with have a x-axis of abnormality score from 0 to 1 or 0 to 100. Here we normalize the CAFR-TB is one that has 0 to 100 score, but we transfer to 0 to 1 scale for ease of comparison. The first graph has a y-axis of sensitivity. The second graph has a y-axis of a proportion of gene experts saved. Let me explain what this is. This is in a hypothetical situation where everyone entering into your program has already been pre-screened, so that everyone entering into the program needs to be tested with gene expert. There's no triage done, so 100% people in the program need to be tested, and a gene expert saved is equal to 0. And this graph shows as your abnormality score increases, what's the proportion of expert tests that can be saved through a CAD program. And this graph has a y-axis of number needed to test, NT. Obviously, when abnormality score is being 0, that's like everyone need to be tested by gene expert. The number needed to test is the highest. As you go to a higher abnormality score, higher cutoff score, it makes sense that you're more selective with people who are more likely to have TB, and the number needed to test by gene expert is reduced to find 1 cases. So the curve and the sensitivity, as I explained, so if the abnormality score, if you test everyone regardless of the any triage results, then your sensitivity obviously is 100%, because you'll find all the cases in the hypothetical situation. But if you want to triage number of tests needed, gene expert tests needed, you need to separate the presumptive patient with higher and lower risk. So as it's understandable, as you increase the cutoff score from 0 to 1, the sensitivity drops. But the rate of the decrease is something that's interesting here. So as you can see, in the ROC curve earlier, I'm using all the following slides, I'm using the Bangladesh data for the illustration purpose. The ROC curve are more or less close, especially at a higher sensitivity level. And these two, infrared and CXR1, they completely overlap. You can't even see the individual color. It's all merged into one curve. But there are very different tests. In fact, all 5 CAD products are very different. The underlying model, although we will never know how it's been constructed, is different. And why do I say that? Is let's follow one curve. This red curve is CAFR-TB. As it goes from 0 cutoff score to something around 0.5, the sensitivity of CAFR-TB remain about 95%. So regardless where you change, in the cutoff score under 0.5, the CAFR-TB can maintain a relatively high level of sensitivity, but then immediately quickly reduce as you increase beyond 0.5. On contrary, the green curve JF-CXR is the one that maintains flat and until the very high level, very high cutoff score, then it quickly drop. What it implies, if you use this tool, this is more for this product is more for keeping a high sensitivity throughout the different cutoff score. But of course, that comes with the expenses of testing, which I'll show you later. Then this blue curve, which we saw earlier, completely overlap with this green curve in the ROC. Now is the polar opposite of the green curve. This test do not mean at each given cutoff score. For the most of the score, it does not have the highest sensitivity. But on the contrary, if you look at the matrix, if you look at GeneXpert Save as a proxy of cause, you can see this blue curve is always on, most of the time, is on top of the other 4 products, meaning that the cost saving or GeneXpert saving ability is higher with this product. A similar story with NT. The purpose I'm showing this schematic is to illustrate that for implementer, without understanding how the model works, it's extremely important to look at the, here I picked the 3 sensitivity, expert, and NNT, the 3 matrix against each cutoff score. As Jake mentioned, that even in the same country, different program use different cutoff score. And this graph will really help program to figure it out what's the implication of different cutoff score on sensitivity, on cost, and etc. And now I'm going to specific selected threshold score that we suggest to look into. So I'm going from continuous performance overall to look at specific performance at a specific cutoff. The one criteria we use to select a cutoff is to match the performance of a human reader. It can match the sensitivity of the human reader or match specificity. In the presentation, I'm showing you when you match the sensitivity of human reader. In the Bangladesh paper, we studying the human, it was a group of 3 radiologists, and they were asked to grade using a standard criteria to grade the X-ray as highly suggestive TB or probably TB or any other abnormality. And then we compile the 3, compile the category into 3 composite category. Highly suggestive is obviously the most strict reading that are most likely to be very specific to TB. So no surprise, the specificity is high, but the sensitivity is low. This is the human performance. Now, probably TB, we compose the second categories, include the previous highly suggestive and any symptom abnormality that is associated with TB. And so the sensitivity has increased drastically, and understandably, the specificity reduced. And any abnormality includes even the abnormality that the radiologist think is not related to TB. And at this, the most loose criteria, the sensitivity for this category for human, Bangladeshi human radiologists is at 95. What we did here is we want to select a cutoff score for each product so that it can match the sensitivity of the human reader at each category. And we show in this table, here is the cutoff score that can achieve the sensitivity, and we're showing the specificity of the AI algorithm at the respective sensitivity. So this is one criteria where a program can use to select a cutoff. And another interesting thing I want to show you from this table is, so once we do have a matching sensitivity. We want to see if the machine AI algorithm are outperforming radiologists by comparing the corresponding specificity. And this column shows the increase of specificity of each algorithm compared to the specificity of the Bangladeshi radiologist. And you can see, and this is a 95% confidence interval. So you can see that there is no confidence interval across this 0. That means all the AI algorithm has significantly higher specificity than human reader. And the addition, the increase in specificity are higher in some products, as you can see here by the colored bar.
Zhijan, so we literally have, like, I need to really leave like 15 minutes for Q&A. So can we wrap up like in 1 minute?
1 minute, okay.
We will have additional questions as well.
Okay, I will try. Then this is a very simple, because a lot of products suggest a 0.5 as their cutoff. So we simply select 0.5, and you can see the sensitivity is pretty high for them. And I want to use the 1 minute to explain this concept, quite complex. For the implementer, what's relevant to them is number of cases detected or missed, and then how many GeneXpert cartridges they have left that they can use. And what we wanted to show in this case is in a almost like a costing model. In a hypothetical population of 20,000 people needed to be screened into a program that all need to be tested. There's some pre-screening criteria, either highly targeted case finding. Without CAD, everyone get GeneXpert, and the prevalence we try to match with the Bangladesh paper, so 15%. That means 3,000 back positive. When we use the sensitivity at 90%, this is a TPP target, to select the cutoff score. What results here means that if you use CAD, each one of the CAD, and use the cutoff score as shown here, you can achieve 90% sensitivity, but without testing all of them. The highest proportion of saving is here, as close to 2/3 of GeneXpert can be saved. That means only 7,000 GeneXpert tests is needed instead of 20,000. So assuming it's $10 per test, so we can do a quick and dirty costing calculation, how much using this CAD program can save your, and assuming we know the cost of CAD, we can do a quick cost efficiency calculation, how much money can be saved through this triage program. And while I have time, another TPP target is looking at the specificity. So if we anchor the specificity at 70%, and then we select, this is the resulting cutoff for each CAD product, then the resulting sensitivity is showing here. And what does that mean for this hypothetical program is this is the number of CAD back positive cases that can be detected, and this is the number of cases that will be missed. I just want to highlight one last slide here. For cost, if a cost is a problem for GeneXpert testing number, is a problem for a projects. I want to highlight that here I'm showing a cutoff score that can generate 50% GeneXpert test saving. The sensitivity, resulting sensitivity is all about 90%. I think what it shows is the ability of CAD in achieving high sensitivity and have significant saving at the same time. Now, I don't have much time. We'll show the presentation online, so you can look at the different performance in subgroups. But in general, older age and people who have prior TB history this is where the subgroup in this CAD does not perform as well. Gender, however, we do not detect a significant differences. So obviously there are always limitations in any study. In all the 3 sites, we use triage cases. So there's always a pre-screening happening, and we don't know the asymptomatic patient, how they perform, how the test perform in the asymptomatic patient. And the prevalence is generally high, but we're trying to work with some prevalence survey data and some TBRH grantee that are using CAD in the screening setting. And HIV status, we don't have enough data on different HIV status, since more study is needed from high TB in HIV burden country to help inform us how to use CAD in this population. And this is where I wanted to address Casey's point. This is what we want to advocate to the industry, to the developer, what we like to see improve in the future. As Jacob mentioned, the standardized reporting is really important, especially the ability to report multiple abnormality, and that ability to mimic a human radiologist report are increasingly requested than just saying yes or no, test or not test, screen or not screened, or just giving a numeric score. And all of the CAD product that we have included here, they're all using digital X-ray. There are some of the R&D in the analog X-ray space that are using mobile phone capture, and also some R&D in the mobile portable X-ray space, but there has yet to be evidence study. So on the pricing, the Casey's question on what if the box is broken about insurance, this is where we really want to advocate and maybe have help, if the community can help advocate to make the pricing from developer more transparent and more of a public information, more easily to access by developer and program. As you can see, we have tried to obtain this information in our landscape projects, but it's very hard to have the developer open their mouths on pricing clearly. And obviously there's a need to develop guidance on how to use different cutoff score in different situations. Yeah, just a quick conclusion. We have shown in 3 studies that AI products has either matched or outperformed various human reader. We think that the analysis needs to go beyond the basic ROC analysis to help implementer understand and use the tool. This field, again, is rapidly changing, that improvement can be made in the next version, and that can have significant improvement. So bear in mind that what we've shown here is only the latest products, and a new version is they're coming out quickly and then can have significant improvement on this. Lastly but not least, StopTB and TBRich team will continue to support innovator in both the development side and the implementation side to help people utilize this type of technology to benefit people living with TB. So sorry for running out of time. Now,
Okay,
question.
Yes, so this is what we're gonna do since we only have 7 minutes for Q&A, and I know people have very scheduled time to schedule. So this is what I'm gonna do. And for the people who wrote the questions in the chat box, what we are going to do is actually collate them, provide them to Jake and Zhizhen to provide written answers, and then put this alongside the presentation, this video presentation, and the Q&A summary on our website. Now, those who have asked questions in the chat box, if you really want to get your questions answered, I would use the raise hand function, because right now I'm just going to actually ask Amir and Yi to ask their questions verbally. I think that unfortunately might be the best way to handle this, and I sincerely apologize. So I think with that said, Amir, if you want to unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and then ask your question, that would be great. And can I ask Jake and Jijen like short answers, okay? So Amir, the floor is yours. Amir? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amir Khan. I'm the CEO of Elsella. I just have a quick comment to the speakers. Thank you very much, Zijen and Jacob. That was an excellent presentation. As an early adopter of the technology and implementer, I just wanted to say that it's really very exciting that there are all these products now available, as opposed to when we began with Delft many years ago, to now see that there are options available for implementers. I think the point that you made with regards to transparency with pricing and the options that are available to implementers is very important, and it's still sometimes very challenging to figure out what might be the best sort of priced option for an implementer. The point that I wanted to emphasize, and maybe you can respond to, is in addition to the savings that result from the use of CAD in terms of screening relative to the assumption that everybody needs to get tested with expert, that still leaves us with a high cost of expert cartridges. It is lower relative to everybody needing an expert, but it's still a very relatively expensive process. And so could you perhaps comment on what additional approaches might then also be used to further decrease gene expert testing costs, for example?
Sure, I can take a first step on this. It's actually one of the conclusion points that I didn't have time to go over. I briefly touched upon the subgroup analysis, and which shows CAD had different performance in different populations. And I think what you can do immediately in the future is to combine those demographic, clinical information, and the CAD score together in generalizing a individual risk score for individual patient management. That can further, I think that can further reduce the cost of follow-on testing and increase the precision of a screening or triage program.
And I would just add to that, besides, I think a thing here to keep in mind, and there was other questions related to this, AI is replacing the human. The rest of your approach is the approach that is used to do case finding, whether that's active case finding or passive screening. So that, and if we just take the base case where AI does the exact same thing as the human, the question is, do you pay the AI or do you pay the human, that from an economic standpoint? And then there's throughput and everything. But the artificial intelligence itself, the software itself, is you still have to have the chest X-ray. You still have to have everything else you're doing. So nothing else really changes. I think if we're really trying to, I think Amir, your question is trying to get at more around the approach to case finding in general, which is a great topic, but maybe beyond the scope of a quick answer that Jackie wants on artificial intelligence. But I do think what Jijen said is one more step that we could take over.
Great. And then if there are, I mean, I know we don't have a lot of time to answer these questions, so if there are additional follow-up questions, Jijen, if you can put the slide where you have your email address, that would be great, so people can also contact you directly. Perfect. So Yi, can you kindly unmute yourself, introduce yourself, and ask your question, please?
Hi, hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Oh, so my name is Ely. I'm the CTO of JAPE Healthcare. Again, I also want to really appreciate the Stop TB partnership and the Jacob and Zhizhen, and it's a really great program. It's very informative presentation. I have two short questions. First, as we are not the front runners, we're absolutely interested in catching up and improving our product. So the first question is there any chance we can access the Bangladesh data and the clinically confirmed ground truth? That's the first question. And secondly, do you guys have any further evaluation in the plans for TB or maybe in possibly other disease? That's my two questions.
So
Two quick, go ahead.
the short answer is, unfortunately, no. We want to keep the Bangladesh data so that we can use it for future versions, for future products. And once we let it out for some developers, we should let it out for everyone. So we really are trying to build an evaluation platform for people and implementers as well as developers to get that done. I think that the need for data is critical. In terms of, yes, and the second answer to your second question is absolutely 100%. We're working on more active case finding data sets, prevalence survey, large prevalence survey data sets. Currently, we hope to have some of that out in a few months, and a number of new TB Reach projects that we're funding hope to be able to use some of that data as well. So I think this space will grow, and if we get some good results from and the WHO Guideline Development Group is reviewing data with a WHO recommendation, it will clearly help the cause for this being used on a wider scale. Over.
Appreciate it.
Nothing to add.
Okay, so I don't see any more hands up. I also would like folks to use this final opportunity to put down any questions you have in the group chat that we can provide written answers to, or again, also feel free to contact Jake and Zhizhen. You see their email addresses on the screen. I think we're going to close now, but I do want to give Sahu, our Deputy Executive Director at the StopT Partnership, to provide like a minute closing remarks, and then we will close this VIS. So Sahu, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and it was a very exciting discussion. Thanks for everybody who joined, and this will be available also in a recorded format on our website. But I would just like to say a few things here. I think artificial intelligence is today not a choice, but it is in many ways already part of our lives and the work we do. And I think this is something that we have to realize, and we can avoid it or we can embrace it. But we at StopTB chose to embrace it, and this happened way back in 2013. And good to see through the TB Reach initiative how so many different developers have been facilitated. So many technologies have been evaluated in real life settings in high TB burden countries. And now the experiences of all these will help countries to scale it up, but also importantly is helping in informing the guideline that is getting developed by WHO, which is also very important in this area. So I think this is a very good thing to see. One thing that came up also in the discussion towards the end is that artificial intelligence, what it was today, will be different tomorrow, and it is always be better because of the machine learning. The more the machine is used, the more the tool is used, the more will be the learning and the better it will get. So it can only get better from here. But even now, it is very clear from what was presented that we have a very good option to have a high throughput, fast screening system for TB, irrespective of where you are, whether you have radiologists, whether you have the settings for all of that. But it is very important to realize that it is available today and it can only get better. It is for us to see whether we become barriers to provide that kind of access to people or we facilitate that. So I would end by saying that we at Stop TB will continue to engage with this. TB Reach will continue to engage with this, and great work by the TB Reach team, Zizen and Jacob. Thank you. Thanks to all of you who participated, especially the group of developers who have worked so hard on this. So thanks to all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day and weekend. Thank you.